Hey y'all! Today we're going to start talking about risk management. So risk management is one of those things that sets the players apart at different levels of the game. As you move up and learn more and more about how the game is played, you tend to take a more risk management based approach. So I can't tell you how many times I've been in, a handicap tournament playing against a 2 or a 3, and they're shooting at everything. They're trying to make every shot on the table. They're trying to figure out how to make the ball because they've been told to be aggressive and to get out. And so they may have a shot that is just, it's a 2% to make it shot, and they'll still try it. As you move up, you'll find that at the pro level, sometimes they'll have a shot that's 100% to make, and they'll turn it down. And the reason why is the risk. So risk is based on, you have different types of risk. You have risks to the game, risks to lose the game. You also have risks to lose the match. And so when a pro is evaluating the odds on shooting a shot, they are going to focus on will I be able to get out from here? What is my percentage to run the table from here? And so risk management at the top levels, they take less shots, less risky shots than your C and D players will. C and D players will try shots pros won't even think about shooting. And the reason is risk management. So we're going to talk about this kind of at length. I'm going to cut it into pieces so they're consumable pieces. There are 4 categories of risk. You have personal risk. Okay? These tend to be permanent risks for the most part. There are some that are temporary. A personal risk is a risk that's based on who you are, you as a person. Okay? So and we're going to talk about personal risk in a minute. Then you have environmental risk. You have shot risk. And then you have post-hit risk. Okay? Now, almost everybody that talks about risk is focused on these 2, shot risk and post-hit risk. Okay? But you need to know that the other ones exist, that personal and environmental exist. So, I want to talk today about personal risk, what it is, some ways to mitigate it, and then we'll move on. So personal risk and environmental risk, there are some things you can do about it. There are some things you can't do anything about. Shot risk and post-hit risk, or you could call that leave risk if you wanted to. Those 2 we will focus on extensively, but for today let's talk about personal risk. So what is personal risk? Personal risk is risk that has something to do with me. Now, there are different categories of different personal risks. So first of all, let's take physical condition. Okay, physical condition is a personal risk. And what I mean by that is not necessarily do you work out or not, although that is part of it. If you're going to play a 7-day tournament and you are not in shape, it's going to show up on day 3, 4, 5, 6. because by the time you get through with a brutal schedule and you're starting to pick up to where you're playing almost every round, so at the US Open when I played, the matches ran from 9 a.m. until midnight, okay? So you could, on day 3, when they were starting to get a bunch of people in the loser's bracket and as things were starting to move along, you could end up playing a match every 2 hours from 9 to midnight and have to be back at 9 in the morning the next morning as well. I'm sorry, 10. It was 10, not 9. But you could end up playing every 2 hours and when I say every 2 hours, that's 2 hours for your match, and then you might get a half-hour break before your next match was up. So after 2 days of that, your legs are screaming at you, okay? You are sore. So obviously being in shape makes a difference when you're playing these big tournaments. If you're playing a tournament that's a short one, okay, great. You have risk around getting to the tournament on time. In the World Championships this year, there was a player who showed up late for their match, and they were penalized a match and the break for not being there. So you have to think about, okay, well, physical condition, I can mitigate that by spending some time in the gym or walking or running or whatever, right? Being late to the match, well, an alarm clock helps, okay? So you take steps to mitigate the risk. You take steps to take away that risk or the odds of that risk manifesting. Now, there are other physical things, okay? So for me, my hand doesn't open. That is my hand all the way open. You can see my last 2 fingers on my hand do not open. That's as far as they open, okay? That's why I've always got those 2 fingers tucked under when I shoot. If you haven't heard me talk about that before, this is a challenge for me, okay? And to mitigate that risk, I had to take the time to learn how to do different shots in a different way because I can't spread my fingers, okay? I have double vision. When I'm down on a shot, I see 2 balls. They're overlapping, okay? And I have to pick the right one to shoot. And it's not always on one side or the other. I can't always shoot the one on the right. I can't always shoot the one on the left. I have to pick the right one to shoot. Now on closer shots, it doesn't make that much difference because I've got enough variance in the pocket that if I pick the wrong one and I'm close to the ball, and so they're very, very close together, it's within the variance of the pocket. But if I've got a long way from the cue ball to the object ball and then a long way from the object ball to the pocket, so I've got this this little tiny place I have to hit, if I pick the wrong ball, I just miss it. Okay, so that's something that I'm still working on. That's why I'm not ready to compete yet. I still have that challenge, and I have not completely overcome it. Those are what I would call personal risks, okay? What else are personal risks? Attitude. I can't tell you how many times I've seen a player who shoots pretty good, miss a ball, lose their temper, and once they've lost their temper, it's over. They just fall apart and they never make another ball. I can't tell you how many times. There's a guy that plays in the handicap tournament that when he misses his first ball, he starts slamming his cue against the table, which is horrible. I mean, it's disrespectful to the place because you're beating up on their equipment, and tables are not cheap. Especially when you're talking about like Brunswicks and Diamonds and Olhausen, they're not cheap. And this guy's beating on it with his cue. Second, it's damaging his cue. Okay? His temper gets the best of him. I can have a temper at times. However, I've learned that what's already happened, it doesn't matter how angry I get about it. It's already happened. There's nothing I can do about it. All I can do is look forward. Okay? You have to keep looking forward. You have to keep you have to live in the present and the future. You can't live in the past. Okay? So if you have a temper problem, if you get rattled when you miss a shot, just take a step back, take a breath. Um, I used to do a thing, and I still do, by the way, where if I miss something I know I should have made um, in a tournament, uh, when I'm sitting in my seat, I will kind of do a Zen thing where I focus on a spot. I'll find a spot on the wall or on the floor or the edge of the table or something, and I'll just focus on that and clear my mind. All I'm thinking about is focusing on that. Let me go ahead and put some racks up here so I don't bore you to death. We'll keep talking, and I'll keep talking through this, but let's get some racks up there, and uh, these are just practice racks. I'm playing against the ghost. Uh, so
So, what about the case where you're out at the tournament and uh, you're done for the day, so you go out to the local pool hall just to stay warmed up and maybe find some way to play some games against something like that. And it gets interesting, and the next thing you know, it's 3 o'clock in the morning, and by the time you get back to the hotel, it's 4 o'clock in the morning, and you got a match at 10. Um, well, that happened. Actually, Mika, uh, Evgeny Stalev, Tony Crosby, uh, and a few other guys went out during the U.S. Open. Went out and they went to a club. Um, and I will tell you, they were dragging a little bit the next day. Now, that said, I mean, they weren't like outrageously late. They didn't stay like till 3, but they stayed pretty late, and they you could see it in their game the next day. The good news was it was during the early rounds, so they really didn't have marquee matches coming up the next morning, and they were all able to get through them. But that does happen, and so how do you mitigate that risk? Well, maybe you make a decision that you're there for the tournament, and so you're going to play. So you're not going to go out, or you're going to set a hard limit for yourself on when you get back to the room, that kind of thing. What other personal risks are there? Well, I mentioned temper. I've only seen one player at the top level who played as well when he was mad, and that was Earl. It actually like fired him up, and he got better when he got angry. But aside from that, you know, there's a there are a lot of personal risks. I'm easily distracted. And we'll talk about this again in environmental, but I have to find a way not to be distracted by what's going on around me. Now, I spent a pretty long time in the military, and situational awareness, knowing what's going on around you, is a big deal. And it took a long time for me to be able to compartmentalize and get to the point where when I'm playing pool, that's all I'm thinking about is pool. Um, I'm still aware of what's going on around me for the most part, but at a tournament, um, focus and losing focus, that's a big personal risk. That's actually what I'm talking about here. Uh, it's very easy to lose your focus. Um, it's something that you have to actively practice, staying focused. Even if you naturally have it, you still have to practice it. Um, you have to be able to zone everything else out. And so actually, if I'm play when I'm playing in a tournament, like when I played in the Albany tournament. When I'm shooting well, I don't even know what's going on around me. The only thing that exists is the shot that I'm making, the table that I'm shooting. It doesn't matter what else is going on. Uh, but it took a long time to get there. And you you have to spend some time just trying to stay focused. Uh, another risk: overtraining, over and under training. So it is easy to overtrain, and I see players all the time that do it. They'll go to a pool hall. I'll, I'll see somebody at the pool hall who's practicing. They're setting up long straight shots or setting up drills, and we'll talk about drills at some point. But they are shooting, and everybody has kind of this natural progression to a day's worth of shooting. You start out shooting poorly, for you, whatever that means for you. You start out shooting poorly, then you get warmed up, your muscles get stretched out, and you begin to make balls, and you begin to shoot at your peak performance for the day. And then after a while, you lose focus and your game drops off. Well, some people will continue to try to do drills and they'll be shooting the drill really well, and then it'll suddenly take a turn, and they won't be able to complete it a couple times in a row. They start to get frustrated, and at that point, what you're doing is you're training your muscles to do the wrong thing. If you're shooting drills and you get to the point where you're not completing the drill, or you're not uh, you're taking a step back. You're not improving in your performance on the drill. All of a sudden, you can't do it. All of a sudden, you're missing straight in shots, whatever. Uh, at that point, get off the table. Do not train yourself to do drills wrong. Get off the table. And I know that if you only have a couple of hours to go shoot pool, and you're at the pool hall, and you're half an hour in and you just can't make anything, it's really hard to step off the table. It's easy to tell yourself, I'm going to do better. It'll turn around. I'll get back. Don't do it. Just get off the table. It Do mental practice. Go watch somebody else's game and try to figure out what the right shot is for every shot they're shooting. Practice the mental part, because if you continue to practice while you're in that state where you're not making balls, you're training yourself not to make balls. Don't do it. Um, so on the other hand, there's undertraining. You don't want to get there, shoot two or three shots, decide you're not making it, and step off the table. You want to give yourself a chance to warm up. So and it's different for everybody. For me, I take about an hour to warm up properly, and once I've been shooting for an hour, then I'm kind of at my peak, and then I stay there for several hours, and then it goes away. Um, some people walk in and they're immediately good, and they stay that way for half a dozen games, and then they're done. But they'll keep shooting. Uh, don't undertrain, don't overtrain. You have to find your right training period. Um, that's a personal risk, because if you overtrain, and your body gets used to this idea of I can do good and then I can do bad, um, that gets into your consciousness, and it gets into your muscle memory, and you're not as precise as you should be. So you want to take the time to practice good. Um, for me, practicing good means practicing running racks, and we'll talk about that when we do a series on practice. Anyhow, so what else are personal risks? There is a risk that that you have a tendency to be over aggressive. There's a risk that you tend to be under aggressive. You have to train the right level of aggression. And we talked about that in another video. Um, my rule of thumb is if I'm not at least 80% to get out on a rack, then I'm not going to shoot the rack. I'm going to go ahead and play safe early. That's just the way I am. That's my level of aggression. Will I shoot an 80% shot? Sure, I will. So, like the one that's on here right now. So, I need to get on the other side of the two. Now, a lot of people will roll straight up the table, which is the high percentage way to get on the two. However, however, that gets me on the exact angle to run directly into the nine with some speed, which lets me break it out, and now I've got a wide open table to shoot at. Uh, what I'm saying here is that you have to understand yourself. You have to think about what your flaws are, and you have to actively take steps to mitigate them. Just like with my eyes, I will take routes like this one I just took on the four, simply so that I'm close and can reduce the risk of missing the shot because I shoot the wrong copy of the four ball. And so I get perfect position here, but I make a mistake here. I hit it too hard. Anyhow, so that's kind of what personal risk is. You have to evaluate yourself, and you have to come up with a strategy to mitigate it. You can see how flustered I am. I set the chalk on the table. Anyhow, like, subscribe, ding the notification bell, and we'll see you next time.